Hey, welcome back, options traders. Happy Monday to everyone. And this is a special video, kind of a request from one of our newest members, Nima, who brought up a really good question about repairing a calendar spread. So, this whole topic of repair strategies, you've got to be really careful with, as you'll find out in this video. Now, the question specifically was if the stock goes up, what's something you can do? There's actually a lot of things you can do, but I'm going to show you an up scenario, the stock goes up, and a down scenario, just to kind of give you some ideas of how you can maybe repair the calendar spread. Let's go take a closer look at how this is done. As always, before we do, please click like and subscribe. It's greatly appreciated and helps to promote the channel. So let's start off with a quick review of a calendar spread for people who might not be familiar with this strategy. You are going to involve two calls or two puts, not one of each. You are going to buy a longer dated option and you will sell a shorter dated option, and they will have the same strikes. So for instance, you might buy the March $100 call and sell the January $100 call. And it's called a calendar spread. I've pointed this out in previous videos where if you look at your broker's platform with the options montage or the chain, you've got the expirations across the top, usually, and you've got the strikes running vertically down the sides. So if you look at what you are spreading off, you are spreading off these strikes horizontally or according to time. So that's why it's called a calendar spread, also called a time spread. So if you were to do that, you're going to get a risk graph that looks something like this. Now, I've talked about this in a recent video. Whenever you see curved lines in what's dubbed an expiration graph, it's the expiration of the shortest dated option. It is not expiration of all options. So in this example, this would be when January expires. So that's why we don't have those nice straight lines. So at any rate, this is what we would call the expiration graph. And you can see that if the stock is down here at 100, that's where we get the bend because it's a 100 strike. Remember, we always get a bend at the strike. So you'd like to see this position over time just sit still. And over time, this red line is going to work its way up towards that maximum gain. Looks like about $5 in this example. However, if the stock gets out here to the far left or the far right, what happens? This red line is getting pushed lower. So we definitely want to see the stock stay somewhat neutral. That's the basic idea behind a calendar spread. Well, this sounds like a good idea on paper because theoretically that's your best guess as to what a stock is going to do in the future, whether it's tomorrow, next week, or at the end of the year. If the stock is 100 today, your best guess is 100. And sometimes people think that that means, oh, you've got a high probability, 85% chance or something. Nope, it's really small. It is your best guess, but it's just only a tiny bit better. But that would be, if you were to look at a bell curve, that would be the tallest part, the very center of that bell curve would be right there at 100. So a lot of times new traders think the reason for trading calendars is just that you've got some kind of a great long-term edge. And that's really not the reason for trading it. So why trade calendars? The main reason for doing a calendar is pricing discrepancies. So remember, we've talked about this before. There's no reason to take a trade without an edge. Now, most of the time we can't say for sure that there's an edge. We can just say it kind of looks like there's an edge, but there has to be some reason for doing it. But again, you don't want to place this trade because you think the stock's price will remain neutral. So to understand the reason for trading a calendar, remember we have to go back to one of our pricing principles, this square root pricing rule, and that it takes about 4 times the amount of time to double an option's price. And this applies to at-the-money options only. And that's what we're generally dealing with a calendar spread. So for example, if the 1-month option is trading for $1, what's the 4-month option worth? Well, a lot of traders think it would be 4 times that, or $4, and it's not. The way we figure it out is we say, well, how much more time is this second option compared to the first? Well, there is 4 times the amount of time. We're just going to take the days to expiration on this one divided by days to expiration on this one, and in this example, we'd get exactly 4. Well, we know that the second option will not be 4 times as much as the first. We have to take the square root of this number. So if you remember your square roots, we're saying what number times itself would give us 4. So that's going to give us 2. And that's the secret. It tells us that this second option over here will not be 4 times the price, it will be 2 times the price. So if the 1-month option is trading for $1, the 4-month option should be trading for twice that, or for $2. If this 1-month option were trading for 3, you would expect the 4-month option to be trading for 6. Now notice I said expected to. These prices would be true for a pricing model, but in the real world they can drift away a little bit, higher or lower. So let's say that we see the 1-month option trading for 4 and the 4-month is trading for 6. Well, is the 1-month expensive or is the 4-month cheap? We don't really know, but we can say compared to each other, the 1-month option is relatively expensive. That would be a reason for buying the 4-month and selling the 1-month. And there you would have a theoretical edge in your favor. But if they're trading at fair value, such as this, there's no reason in the world for doing the calendar spread. You're just doing coin flips and hoping that you guess some of them correctly, not to mention the commissions. You've got 2 in and 2 out, and they add up quickly. So the better way to approach a calendar spread is to treat it as a portfolio concept. And what that means is that you don't just randomly pick a calendar spread here and there because you think the stock is going to sit still. Instead, it becomes part of a long-term portfolio. So for instance, you might say every single month you're going to do 20 of these. It's like the casino spinning that roulette wheel over and over and over. That's where the casino gets its edge. It can lose on any given bet. And in the same way, a trader can certainly lose on any one of these if you're just randomly picking calendar spreads. You want to find a theoretical edge and do lots of them. So that's the first word of warning. If you're not willing to treat calendar spreads in that respect, probably not the best strategy to use. So now with that background, let's talk about repair strategies. First thing to remember, there is no such thing as repairing a strategy. The word repair kind of implies that you take it into the shop and it comes back all fixed and patched up. In other words, what's the magic button that I need to push where I get all my money back? That's what people are expecting when they hear a repair strategy. It just simply isn't. It's really a bad name. There's one strategy in particular that's known as a repair strategy. It's really for long shares of stock, and I do have a video in our forum here talking about that if you want to search for it. But the idea is that people now try to use this for any type of strategy. But always remember that if you take a loss, it's a sunk cost. It's gone. There's nothing you can do about it. So if you lose on Microsoft shares, can you buy NVIDIA shares and make money on it and say, oh, I repaired my Microsoft? Sure, if that makes you happy, you can call that a repair strategy. But notice all it is that it's a second trade that made up for the losses of the first. But the reason that people usually call them repair strategies is they're trying to use part of the original trade that they initiated that created a loss. And so what they usually do is involve generating credits or maybe a small debit to create a new strategy, kind of giving them a second bite at the apple here, saying, maybe I can make it work a second time. And again, what you're doing is hoping to recoup losses. But we all know that hope is not a good strategy. So you don't want to use a repair strategy just because you like the word repair or because you're fearful of taking a loss. You want to do it because your outlook has changed and it's now a convenient trade to make given the fact that you've got a few of these options already in your account. So let's now talk about that you understand the repair word is not really good to use, but we're going to use it anyway. Let's go to our calendar spread. And let's say that the stock is 100 Volatility is at 25%. We go to a pricing model, we find that the 90-day $100 call is worth $4.95. That same model tells us that a 30-day $100 call is $2.86. So if you were to spend $4.95 and then collect $2.86, the net debit would be $2.09, and this would be your maximum loss on the calendar spread. And so this would be the risk graph for this example. So again, we get the bend right here at 100 because we're long and short the 100 strike. But of course, even though that's the theoretically best spot for the stock to close, that's really unlikely that it's going to close at exactly 100.00. Most of the time, you're going to be off of this a little bit, or maybe a lot. So let's say that maybe the stock is ever so slightly down here or down here. If you had to pick a side of this dotted line to be on, this is probably the better side, because at least now the short option expires worthless. We don't have to worry about buying that back or maybe getting assigned. But if we land on this side, or maybe a little bit further away, it's still not bad. We can still salvage this position or repair the position if you want to use that word. But we do have to worry about the short call because it's now in the money. And if we don't do anything, we're going to get assigned. And if the stock is high enough, you're probably going to have to exercise your long call to make delivery on the assignment. And so now you've just pitched away all of the extrinsic value. And so that's going to shove you into maximum loss immediately, even though you're only just sort of wrong. So this is where we'd like to do some type of an amendment and say, okay, look, this thing has gone against me a little bit, but what could I do here if I do want to stay in the position? So for example, let's say that the stock rises to 105. Now, how you're going to morph this is going to depend on a lot of different factors. Stock price, if we have any skews, changes in volatility, but I'm just trying to give you the basic idea of what the morph would be. So we're going to assume that the stock rises to 105, and one thing you could do is to leg into a vertical spread. So remember that the stock is 105. Now you're long the 60-day $100 call that is priced at $7.11. So you were long the 90-day call. We're assuming 30 days have passed. So that option is now worth $7.11. Now the option that you sold that initially had 30 days to expiration is at expiration. It's a $100 call, so it's trading just for $5 of intrinsic. Stock is at 105, you're short the 100 call, it's worth exactly $5. So you could close this position right now for a credit of $2.11, but you paid $2.09. So in this case, you're up 2 cents, but after commissions, it's a loss. Not a huge loss, but this might be a condition where somebody would want to repair it. But typically you're going to have some type of a loss here, 50 cents, 75 cents, and that's where you're going to want to try to do some type of repair. So one thing you can do here is to say I'm trying to recoup the $5 of intrinsic value on this short call. I need to buy it back or I'm going to get assigned. So I could sell a 60-day $105 call. Pricing model says is worth $4.24. So I'm not quite getting the full $5 back, but I'm getting the bulk of it, and then I have to buy back the expiring $100 call by spending $5. So on a net basis, it's another 76 cents that I've got to shell out to close this position and morph it. My cost basis is now $2.85. It used to be $2.09, so I've increased it a little bit, but it's given me another shot to stay in the trade and potentially turn it into a winner. So the main reason for this morph is that we're trying to recoup the intrinsic value on this short call that we have to buy back. Now, normally if we were trying to sell an option against this now 60-day option, we'd probably want to sell a weekly option or a bi-weekly, something shorter. So why do we jump out and do this 60-day vertical spread? Well, because we're selling an out-of-the-money option, or in this case, an at-the-money option. So to recover this $5, we need to go out in time. That's the whole idea of this type of morph. We're going to jump out in time, sell a longer dated option so we can recoup this $5. So once we've done this, we have legged into now a 60-day 100-105 vertical spread. There's our bend at 100, bend at 105. So the current curve looks like this. We have 60 days to go, and the stock is right here at 105. So we definitely need to be bullish if we're going to do this morph. Now, the good news is we're in an area of positive theta. This is going to appreciate over time. But take a look at, let's say, 30 days later. We've got 30 days to expiration on this vertical spread. Hasn't moved much. So you've probably just, after commissions, really haven't done anything, and yet you had to sit in this position for 30 days and now potentially expose yourself to this loss. With 15 days until expiration, not a whole lot of progress. Remember, spreads move slowly. It's only until you get right up until expiration that now purple line is going to be right up by that black line. And that's when you're going to see the bulk of these profits. So another thing to take from this is to understand how your spreads behave and that this is not going to recover any losses anytime soon. But while you're waiting for that, in this case, we've actually increased our potential loss a little bit down to $2.85. But that's a nice little morph if the stock price rises. Simply sell an option, longer dated option that matches the expiration of your long option and try to recover the intrinsic value that you have to spend on that short expiring option. So what can you do if the stock falls? Let's say it falls to 95. We'll go 5 points down. Well, again, we can leg into a vertical, but we're going to put a little twist on it here. So our stock is 95. You are long the 60-day $100 call. Pricing model says is worth $1.93. And what you're going to do here is to sell that call twice. We want to close it, and then we want to turn it into a short call. We want to be short the 100 call, and then what we're going to do is from this credit, we're going to buy the same expiration, but a lower strike, maybe the 95 call. So it's an at-the-money call. So we've collected 386. We have to spend 384. Again, this is according to a pricing model. And when we do this, this is going to give us the long 60-day 95-100 vertical, and we got a small credit of 2 cents, but basically a net zero. That's the idea anytime you hear a repair strategy. Traders are trying to get out for a slight credit or maybe a slight debit, but giving themselves another chance at making profits. So again, the initial debit, remember, was 209. So now your cost basis is 207. So it's about the same. So now you're long the 95-100 vertical for 207. So now this becomes your risk graph. And if you've got 207 into it, it's a 5-point spread. You're long the 95 call, short the 100. Most it can be worth is 5. So your maximum gain is 293. As with all spreads, you're probably never going to see the full 293. Probably not going to make a whole lot of sense to hold it that close to expiration. But you should be able to get some type of a decent profit out of it if your outlook is bullish. Remember, the stock is now 95. We're long the at the money. We need this to rise. So we definitely have some movement in this stock that's necessary, and it's going to be a slow climb because it's a vertical spread. However, if it goes against us again, we're out 207. We would have been out 209 with the calendar spread. But this is a nice little morph that will give you a chance of making profit if, in this example, if your outlook is bullish. Don't do it just because it's a repair strategy. Do it because your outlook has changed. So the thing that I like about these is it really shows the power of options. What you want to learn how to do is to alter your risk graphs, what we typically call a morph. But by understanding your skews, your tilts, your hedges, rolls, morphs, we can alter these risk graphs to put ourselves into better positions based on new information. And that's what makes options trading so much more powerful than just using shares of stock alone. And for anyone who'd like to learn more about the arts and science of options trading, please check out the Alpha Trader course, Strategy Lab, and a brand new Greeks class for 2025. There's also a candlesticks and technical analysis course. You can find it all at optionsatoz.com. Also, please join us on Options A to Z's Facebook trading group, and you can find a link in the description below.